I am Leah Chambers, 25, and literally last weekend, my lifelong role as the family's quiet artist and forgotten sibling exploded into humiliation at my sister's secret engagement party, igniting my resolve to flip the family script once and for all. The carefully constructed invisibility I'd maintained, it crumbled spectacularly at Danica's lavish surprise party, the one my entire family planned meticulously without bothering to mention it to me. My parents, Althea and Randall Wexley, treated me like a shadow cast by Danica's dazzling spotlight, from as far back as I can remember. Painting was my solace, my safe space from the constant criticism of my mother and my father's dismissive indifference. But even my art, no matter how successful it became, remained invisible to them, brushed aside like a childish hobby. That Saturday afternoon, the sprawling gardens of our family estate glowed with strings of delicate fairy lights, champagne flutes catching the sinking sun's warm rays. I only learned about it by chance, stumbling upon a catering receipt on the kitchen counter. Feeling hollow, I stared at the total, more spent on one party than my parents ever invested in my dreams. I wandered numbly outside, clutching my worn leather sketchbook, the only comfort that never judged me. As laughter echoed through the mansion's open doors, my presence felt insignificant, like an unwanted intruder in my own home. "Leah, what on earth are you wearing?" My mother's shrill voice pierced through the chatter as I reluctantly entered the decorated terrace. She gave my paint-spattered jeans and oversized sweater a disdainful look, sighing theatrically for the benefit of her friends nearby. "I told you she lives in another world." A ripple of condescending chuckles surrounded me as I froze, humiliation burning across my face. Danica appeared beside her fiancé Grant, her pristine pastel dress shimmering beneath the lights, an elegant diamond glittering on her manicured finger. She eyed me with practiced indifference. "Oh, Leah, you're here." Danica's voice was cool, her smile plastic. "I honestly thought you wouldn't bother coming. Parties aren't exactly your thing, are they?" "Apparently, neither are invitations," I snapped, voice shaking despite my attempt at composure. Gasps and murmurs erupted around us. My father's frown deepened and he stepped closer, his gaze hardening. "Enough dramatics, Leah. If you'd shown more ambition like Danica, perhaps we'd have a reason to celebrate you." The sting of his words was as familiar as it was painful. Years of unspoken hurt surged inside me, turning to molten anger. Ambition? I've poured my heart into every canvas I've painted, every achievement you've chosen to ignore. My mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Leah, stop embarrassing yourself. This isn't the time." "No, it never is it?" My voice cracked as tears threatened, but I swallowed them down. "Nothing I do ever matters to you." The crowd had gone quiet, all eyes fixed uncomfortably on us. My parents stared daggers, fury barely masked beneath forced smiles. "You just ruined your sister's engagement," Althea hissed under her breath. But here's the tea. Their shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back, I'm about to flip the script and change everything. And if you've ever felt invisible or undervalued, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost, you wouldn't believe what they will do once I finally take control. I slipped away from the shocked faces on the terrace, retreating to the familiarity of my childhood bedroom upstairs. Shutting the door behind me, I leaned heavily against it, feeling my heartbeat pounding furiously in my chest. All around me, the room felt frozen in time, a preserved relic of my past invisibility. Sketchbooks stacked haphazardly on shelves, art awards gathering dust in forgotten corners, each a quiet testament to my overlooked accomplishments. Sinking onto the faded patchwork quilt, my fingers traced the weathered edges of a framed photograph on my bedside table. It captured me at 16, standing proudly beside a painting I'd exhibited at a regional art show. Despite the bright ribbon pinned to its corner, my parents hadn't even bothered to attend. Instead, they'd been busy applauding Danica's acceptance into a prestigious university program, as if nothing else in the world existed. The memory hit sharply, fresh and raw, bringing tears stinging to my eyes. I remembered clearly the night of my first solo gallery exhibition, an event I'd poured my soul into, painting late into the night, brushing strokes of color onto canvas until my fingers ached. It had been my moment, my quiet triumph. I'd stood there under soft gallery lights, surrounded by friends and teachers offering warm congratulations, checking the entrance constantly, hoping desperately my parents would appear, at least for a minute. But they never came. Instead, my phone buzzed with a dismissive text from my father. "Sorry, something came up. Congrats." I'd later found out the something was Danica's sorority mixer, an event they couldn't bear to miss. Even graduation day, a milestone I'd believed might earn their respect, was overshadowed by Danica's official job offer, an event treated with the reverence of royalty. My degree in honors, painstakingly earned over 4 years, received only a hurried congratulations over breakfast, quickly drowned out by my mother gushing about Danica's signing bonus. My heart clenched now, as fresh bitterness pooled inside me. I reached for the old sketchbook on my desk, flipping slowly through the pages filled with sketches, notes, and half-realized dreams. Hidden among them were drawings I'd made of my family, capturing happier, hopeful moments that never quite materialized in real life. These images mocked me now, relics of a naive hope that someday they'd finally see me, recognize my worth, or even care just a little. A soft knock on my bedroom door startled me from my spiral. "Leah?" It was Danica's voice, oddly gentle. "Look, I'm sorry if things downstairs got a little out of hand, but can we just forget it happened? You know how Mom and Dad are." I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. "Forget? How convenient for you." She hesitated, her tone sharpening slightly. "It's not like you ever wanted the attention anyway, right? Isn't that what you've always claimed?" I stared at the closed door, anger simmering. "There's a difference between not craving attention and being completely erased, Danica. But I don't expect you to understand." A pause lingered, heavy and charged, before I finally heard her footsteps receding down the hallway. As I sat alone, my mind racing through a lifetime of subtle rejections and emotional dismissals, one truth solidified inside me. I was done begging for crumbs of recognition. My family had trained me to accept invisibility, but I wouldn't be silent anymore. They didn't realize it yet, but their indifference had given me exactly the clarity I needed. The story they'd ignored, the story of my life, was about to take a very different turn. I woke early the next morning, my body heavy from the emotional storm of the previous night. Pale dawn streamed weakly through my curtains, washing everything in soft gray tones. The house felt eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the bitter chaos that had unfolded mere hours before. Restless, I slipped from bed and wandered aimlessly down the hall toward the back staircase, seeking solace in the quiet of the old family library, a place rarely disturbed by my parents or Danica, filled with forgotten corners and hidden memories. As I eased open the heavy oak door, the scent of aged paper enveloped me, familiar and comforting. I drifted absently along shelves lined with leather-bound books, their gilded titles shimmering faintly in the dim light. Near the back corner, I hesitated, noticing an unfamiliar shadow tucked between the classics and the encyclopedias. Stepping closer, I reached out and drew the object from its hiding spot. A weathered, dark red leather journal, its corners worn smooth by years of handling. My pulse quickened as I flipped open the cover and caught sight of a name scrawled hastily in faded ink: Romey Wexley. My breath stilled. Aunt Romey, my mother's older sister, had vanished from family conversation years ago. No one spoke about her, and any attempt I'd made as a child to ask was swiftly silenced. Hands trembling slightly, I turned the fragile pages. Aunt Romey's looping handwriting sprawled across the paper, words pouring out like whispered confessions. My heart raced as I absorbed fragments of her life, thoughts filled with frustration and sadness, emotions I recognized far too intimate. She wrote candidly of being overshadowed by my mother, of being systematically erased by my grandparents when she dared to step outside their rigid expectations. Her accounts were raw, each line brimming with resentment at a family obsessed with appearances, status, and control. And then, as I turned deeper into the journal, I froze. Romey's entries shifted from hurt and disillusionment to suspicion and fear. She'd begun to document unsettling discoveries, mentions of money disappearing, documents altered, and whispered secrets about my parents' sudden influx of wealth. But it was her final entries that sent ice down my spine. "They found out, I know. Althea threatened me today. She said she'd make sure I'd disappear before I can tell anyone the truth." I didn't believe her at first, but now, I'm afraid. My breath caught painfully, heart hammering in my chest. Another entry followed, hurried and shaky as though written under duress. If you're reading this, know they've silenced me. Your parents stole everything, my inheritance, your grandparents' trust fund. They lied to everyone. You must expose them, Leah. Don't let them win. I sank to the floor, knees weak, gripping the journal as if my life depended on it. Suddenly, every unanswered question, every strange silence about Aunt Romey, made terrifying sense. This wasn't just my story, it was hers too. Our invisibility was no accident, it was deliberate, strategic cruelty. In that moment, fury crystallized into fierce determination. Romey's story, silenced for years, deserved to be heard, and if no one else had the courage, I would be her voice. But it wouldn't stop there. My eyes narrowed, resolve solidifying with every breath. I'd channel this revelation, this buried injustice, into something powerful. Something they couldn't ignore. Romey had handed me more than just the truth. She'd given me a purpose. It was time to take control, to harness years of pain into a project so powerful that it would shatter the family mold and finally expose the lies. A week passed, blurred into an intense cycle of sleepless nights and long days immersed in painting, fueled by Romey's revelations and a fierce, focused anger. My secret project, born from years of silent frustration, had grown into a series of bold, unapologetic canvases capturing everything I'd ever felt but had never said. Each stroke was purposeful, each color chosen to expose the raw nerves beneath my family's polished facade. Today, the series would be privately viewed by an influential curator, Lena Hayward. If she approved, it meant funding, exposure, and validation, not from my parents, but from a world they'd never allowed me to touch. I dressed carefully, tugging nervously at the sleeves of a simple black blouse, wondering if Lena would see through my art to the scared girl still desperately craving acceptance. The faint ding of my phone startled me. A brief glance revealed a message from Danica. "Tonight is important, Leah. Please for once don't ruin things." I scoffed softly, slipping the phone into my pocket. Tonight was the annual Wexley family dinner, a grand social spectacle my parents hosted each year to showcase their perfectly curated lives. It was always a night of subtle digs, veiled insults, and silent humiliation for me, one I'd usually spent fading quietly into the background. But this year, after everything I'd learned about Romey, attending felt like willingly stepping into a snake pit. Before anxiety could swallow me whole, the doorbell chimed softly. I hurried downstairs, heart pounding. Lena stood waiting in the foyer, eyes bright with anticipation. She offered me a firm handshake, warmth in her confident smile. "Leah, your work intrigued me from the photos you sent, but in person." She trailed off, stepping toward the canvases I'd lined up carefully along the studio wall. I held my breath, watching Lena closely as she moved slowly, absorbing each painting in silence. Her expression was impossible to read at first, neutral and professional, but as she reached the final canvas, a haunting portrait inspired by Romey's journal, her demeanor shifted. She paused, turning back to me, eyes sharp and curious. "There's something deeply personal here," she observed softly. "It's powerful, honest. Can I ask, what inspired it?" My throat tightened, emotion bubbling dangerously close to the surface. "My aunt," I admitted quietly. "She was erased by my family, hidden away, silenced. Her truth deserved to be told." Lena regarded me steadily, clearly sensing the weight behind my words. "Art like this doesn't just speak, it shouts," she finally said, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. "You have something extraordinary here, Leah. The world needs to see it. I'd like to arrange an exhibition." My breath released shakily, relief surging through me. It wasn't validation from my family, but somehow, this meant infinitely more. Lena extended her hand again, this time in earnest congratulations. "You have a powerful story," she said gently. "Never apologize for telling it." As she left, I lingered in the quiet glow of the moment, buoyed by an unfamiliar sense of pride and hope. My phone buzzed again, a cold reminder from Danica about tonight's dinner. A shadow crept back into my thoughts, dimming the joy. Tonight's gathering would undoubtedly be painful, a gauntlet of judgment and condescension designed to keep me small. But standing in my studio, surrounded by the evidence of my courage, I knew something had fundamentally changed. For the first time, I wasn't going as the overlooked daughter desperate for crumbs of approval. I was going armed with truth, buoyed by a success they'd never see coming. Whatever humiliation they had planned, tonight would mark the beginning of the end, of their control, their lies, and the quiet acceptance they'd always expected from me. Tonight, Leah Chambers would finally be visible. Stepping onto the driveway that evening felt surreal, as though I were entering enemy territory. Elegant cars lined the front yard, each one polished to perfection, glinting coldly under the fading sun. The house itself, our imposing family mansion, loomed ahead like a well-decorated fortress, glowing with soft golden light spilling from every window, laughter trickling outward like sweet poison. With a steadying breath I entered, feeling immediately swallowed by the meticulously staged elegance. Guests mingled gracefully, sipping expensive champagne, their polite conversation rippling like satin waves, but beneath the gentle hum, I sensed curious eyes flickering toward me. Whispers trailing after my every step. My mother, Althea, glided forward from the crowd, her eyes sharp and assessing as they took in my appearance, her lips curled into a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Leah, darling, how unique," she remarked, voice laced with barely concealed disdain. She glanced pointedly at my understated black dress and simple flats, clearly unimpressed. "I suppose your little art career doesn't require formal attire." Before I could respond, Danica approached, radiant in glittering silver, holding on to Grant's arm. She flashed me an insincere smile, perfectly practiced. "Oh, Leah, you actually made it. Grant, doesn't she look so authentic?" Danica laughed lightly, her insult carefully disguised as a compliment. Grant looked briefly uncomfortable, but smiled politely, nodding silently. Anger simmered beneath my calm exterior, but I forced a polite smile, refusing to give them the satisfaction. "Congratulations, Danica. I'm glad you're enjoying the spotlight again." She stiffened, her perfect facade cracking for just a moment. "Always so dramatic, Leah. It's not a crime that people enjoy being around me." My father joined us, adjusting the cufflinks on his expensive suit, his eyes coolly disinterested. "Leah, do try not to embarrass the family tonight. We've important people here. Perhaps keep your artistic ideals to yourself." Before I could reply, Althea gently squeezed his arm, whispering something that made him laugh dismissively. They moved away together, leaving me feeling exposed and alone. Eyes prickling with angry tears. I took refuge near a corner, clutching a glass of untouched champagne, observing the room with growing resentment. Around me, my parents' friends discussed vacations and investments, dropping casual remarks about Danica's perfect future and how lucky my parents were to have raised such a remarkable daughter. Not once did my name or existence enter their polished conversations. Then, abruptly, Grant's mother, Hilary Baines, cornered me, her eyes glittering with condescension. "So, Leah, remind me, do you actually earn money with those little paintings of yours, or is it more of a therapeutic hobby?" Heat flared across my cheeks, and I bit my tongue hard to keep myself from snapping. Instead, I met her gaze evenly, forcing out a careful response. "Art can be quite lucrative, Mrs. Baines. I'm actually preparing for a major exhibition soon." Her painted eyebrows lifted skeptically. "Really? How charming." She turned away dismissively, whispering something to another guest that elicited a soft ripple of laughter at my expense. Humiliation burned sharply, each snide comment slicing deeper than the last. My heart ached with a familiar ache, years of invisibility concentrated into a single painful moment. Yet beneath the hurt, something else stirred, steady and powerful. Determination. As the evening dragged painfully onward, each sneer and veiled insult strengthened my resolve. My family had spent a lifetime making me feel small, unworthy, invisible. But tonight marked the last time they'd succeed, because soon I'd reveal a truth far greater than their superficial lies. The gauntlet of contempt they'd set was brutal, but unknowingly they'd forged me into someone stronger than they could ever imagine. Tonight, their arrogance would become their downfall. The dinner bell rang softly, signaling guests to the grand dining hall. I hesitated, stomach knotted with dread. But there was no turning back now. I took my seat at the far end of the long ornate table, deliberately positioned away from the inner circle, where my parents presided with Danica and Grant. Crystal glasses sparkled beneath chandeliers, silverware glinted coldly, and hushed laughter drifted around the room like silk ribbons. A parade of extravagant dishes arrived in practiced rhythm, each plated with painstaking elegance. Yet, amid all this polished grandeur, I felt utterly isolated, as though trapped behind glass, visible but untouchable. Midway through dinner, my father gently tapped his knife against his glass, commanding instant silence. He rose smoothly, his eyes confidently scanning the attentive faces of his guests. "Friends, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate the engagement of our beloved Danica and Grant," he began, smiling warmly. Guests applauded politely, murmuring appreciation. Then, to my shock, his eyes drifted deliberately toward me, expression hardening slightly. "And while we rejoice in this joyous union, Althea and I have another announcement of equal importance." A hush settled, heavy with anticipation. My heart thumped painfully, every nerve screaming in silent alarm. "We have always valued family loyalty and dignity," he continued, his voice now edged with severity. "Unfortunately, not all members have upheld those values. After careful consideration, we've decided that Leah's continued association is no longer aligned with the interests or reputation of the Wexley family." Gasps rippled down the table, every head swiveling toward me in stunned disbelief. Blood drained from my face as humiliation surged hot and overwhelming. Beside my father, my mother stared coldly, her gaze devoid of sympathy. Danica watched silently, expression carefully neutral, betraying nothing. My father's voice rang again, firm and unyielding. "Effective immediately, Leah is no longer recognized as part of this family. She forfeits any future claims, privileges, or inheritance. This decision was not made lightly, but we must preserve our integrity." Every word landed like a punch, stripping away layers of self-worth, reducing me to nothing before a room of silent spectators. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. My voice trembled, raw yet defiant. "Integrity?" I whispered, choking back a bitter laugh. "You wouldn't know integrity if it slapped you in the face. You built your lives on lies, cruelty, and stolen legacies." My father's jaw tightened dangerously. "Mind yourself, Leah." But something in me had already snapped, years of silence erupting uncontrollably. "Is that why you erased Aunt Romey? Was her integrity too inconvenient? Or was she simply another disposable member of this family who didn't fit your image?" The color drained from my mother's face, her eyes wide with panic, quickly masked with icy composure. My father stared, frozen in shock, his gaze flicking briefly to the concerned, whispering guests around us. "Enough!" Althea's voice sliced through the tension, brittle and commanding. She signaled swiftly toward staff, instructing sharply, "Escort Leah upstairs, now." Before I could resist, 2 attendants grasped my arms firmly, pulling me gently but firmly from my seat. Around me, murmurs rose into a shocked crescendo as I was hurried from the dining hall, cheeks burning with shame and rage. At the top of the staircase, my mother stepped close, eyes narrowed dangerously. "You've caused enough damage for one lifetime. Until our guests leave, you're staying exactly where you can't embarrass us any further." She flung open the attic door, guiding me roughly inside. As I stumbled into the darkness, the door slammed shut behind me, followed by the unmistakable sound of a key turning sharply in the lock. Alone in the suffocating silence, surrounded by shadows and discarded family heirlooms, the magnitude of my abandonment crashed down heavily. Yet, amid the crushing pain, anger flickered to life again, fueled by Romey's truth and my family's ruthless cruelty. They thought they'd silenced me forever, but their ultimate betrayal had just set my voice free. I stood motionless in the suffocating darkness, the attic's stale air pressing heavily against my lungs. Slowly my eyes adjusted, shadows taking shape around dusty furniture, stacked boxes, and forgotten relics of the family's carefully hidden past. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, a rapid drumbeat of panic mixed with simmering fury. How had it come to this? Locked away like an inconvenient truth, erased as thoroughly as Romey had been. Determined to steady myself, I reached into my pocket, retrieving my phone. Its weak glow illuminated the room faintly, casting long shadows on cobwebbed walls. Shaky fingers dialed Kit, my closest friend, and one of the few people who knew everything I'd endured. "Leah?" Kit's concerned voice crackled through weak reception. "What happened? Are you okay?" I struggled to control my trembling voice. "They locked me in the attic, Kit. Officially disowned, humiliated in front of everyone. It's bad." "Oh my God!" Kit breathed, horrified. "That's insane. Listen, I'll come get you right." "Wait," I cut her off softly, something catching my eye. "Hold on, let me call you back." I moved forward, curiosity momentarily eclipsing panic. There, partially hidden beneath faded sheets, was a small, weathered trunk, one I'd never noticed before. Kneeling carefully, I lifted the heavy lid, revealing neatly stacked files and envelopes inside, each meticulously labeled. My stomach twisted as I recognized Romey's elegant handwriting. Hands shaking, I withdrew the first envelope, flipping it open. Inside were bank statements, trusts, and legal documents meticulously chronicling my grandparents' financial arrangements. As I scanned through them, nausea surged. Dozens of pages clearly showed transfers from Romey's account directly into my parents' names. One document in particular stood out, my own trust fund. It was supposed to have become available on my 21st birthday, a generous inheritance from my grandparents. Instead, signatures boldly forged in my own hand authorized its transfer directly to my parents, liquidating every cent. My heart pounded wildly as I grasped the full scope of their betrayal. But it was the next discovery that shook me even more violently. At the bottom of the trunk lay a single, yellowed envelope marked simply, Romey? Meadowview Psychiatric. With shaking hands I pulled out the contents, official documents, commitment forms, letters between my parents and doctors, revealing the chilling truth. Romey hadn't vanished willingly, she'd been unjustly institutionalized at my parents' insistence, labeled unstable, silenced to hide an affair between my father and another prominent socialite. Tears burned my eyes, grief mingling sharply with anger. Romey had suffered alone, robbed of freedom, her reputation destroyed, all to protect my parents' carefully constructed facade. Suddenly my phone rang again, cutting through the silence. Lena's name flashed urgently. I answered instinctively, voice thick with emotion. Lena? Leah, I'm so glad you picked up. Lena's voice was brimming with excitement. I couldn't wait. I shared your work with our investors immediately after our meeting. They were blown away, Leah. They've agreed to fully fund your exhibit. That's not all. The gallery wants your entire collection showcased prominently at the National Art Expo. Your work is about to explode. Her words landed like thunderclaps, electrifying me despite the chaos surrounding me. At the very moment my family sought to crush me, life had delivered an undeniable victory. Leah? Lena pressed softly, sensing my stunned silence. Are you there? I'm here, I finally whispered, voice strong now with certainty. This changes everything. Hanging up gently, I stood taller in the attic's dim shadows, gripping the damning evidence in one hand, my phone in the other. My family had planned to bury me, to erase my existence entirely, but fate had handed me the keys to their destruction. Tonight would end very differently than they'd imagined. They'd locked me away to silence me, but their cruel prison had instead provided everything I needed. I took a steadying breath, clarity flooding me. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice, and I was finally ready to claim it. Heart racing, I gathered the documents carefully and slipped them into my bag, their sharp edges a comforting reminder of the truth now burning brightly within me. I had one chance to confront them, one chance to dismantle their carefully maintained charade. Moving quickly, I scanned the attic for anything to aid my escape. Near the far corner, barely visible in the shadows, was an old service store partially obscured by boxes. Memories of childhood exploration returned in a flash. I rushed to it, heart pounding in anticipation. With effort, I pushed away the heavy boxes, coughing at the dust that clouded upward. To my relief, the old handle turned stiffly, and the door creaked open, revealing narrow wooden stairs descending toward the servants' corridor below. Taking a deep breath, I slipped through, carefully closing the door behind me. As I emerged downstairs, soft classical music and the distant hum of conversation reached me once more. My heart quickened, determination surged powerfully through my veins. I re-entered the grand dining room unnoticed, the lavish scene unchanged, my parents now circulating with forced smiles, smoothly pretending nothing had happened. The audacity of their hypocrisy hit me like ice water, further igniting my resolve. Stepping confidently forward, I approached the table where my parents, Danica, Grant, and their elite circle were seated, laughter trailing off as eyes shifted toward my determined figure. My mother paled instantly, eyes narrowing dangerously. Leah, how dare, I interrupted, voice calm but powerful. I have something important to share with everyone here, something my parents desperately wanted to hide. Althea's gaze turned cold, her grip tightening on her wine glass. My father rose sharply, eyes blazing. Stop this instant, Leah. No, I said firmly, meeting his gaze without flinching. You've silenced me and others long enough. Did any of you know my parents stole my inheritance to finance this lavish life? I raised the documents boldly, eyes scanning the guests who shifted uncomfortably, murmuring disbelief. You're being absurd, Althea hissed, trying to keep her voice low. Someone remove her now. But no one moved, transfixed by the drama unfolding before them. And Aunt Romey, I continued, voice unwavering, institutionalized against her will, labeled insane to protect their reputation. All because of an affair my father tried desperately to conceal. Gasps erupted, guests recoiling in shocked horror. My father's face turned crimson with rage and humiliation. Danica stared at me, wide-eyed, realizing for the first time the depth of our parents' deception. Leah, stop, she whispered shakily, embarrassment and horror in her voice. I won't, I responded firmly, refusing to yield. I spent my life in the shadows, silently enduring humiliation, but I'm done accepting invisibility. These documents, this truth, is yours to bear now. I threw the papers onto the table, scattering evidence of their crimes like fallen leaves before stunned faces. The silence was deafening. Althea sank into her chair, color drained from her face, unable to speak. My father's fists clenched in powerless fury, eyes darting frantically as their carefully constructed empire cracked before everyone's eyes. I stepped back slowly, savoring the stunned shock rippling through the crowd. You built your lives on lies and betrayal, I declared, voice steady and clear. But your legacy ends here. Turning calmly, I walked away from the shattered remains of their reputation, leaving the gasps and whispers of betrayal behind me. With every step, the crushing weight of their rejection lifted further, replaced by a profound, exhilarating freedom. At the front door, I paused briefly, breathing deeply. Kit was outside waiting, engine humming gently in the drive, a comforting silhouette against the night. I cast one last glance at the glittering mansion, a false sanctuary of pain and deception. Then I stepped out into the cool evening air, heart lightened with a victory deeper than revenge. Tonight, I'd finally chosen myself. Kit's car hummed gently through the darkened streets, the mansion shrinking behind us until it faded into nothing more than a memory. The silence between us felt warm, reassuring, far removed from the suffocating tension I'd just escaped. Kit finally glanced over, eyes wide but gentle. Leah, are you okay? That must have been brutal back there. I sighed deeply, releasing tension I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Honestly, it felt amazing. A slow grin spread across Kit's face, laughter bubbling gently beneath her words. You should have seen their faces when you dropped those documents. Iconic. Seriously, who knew you had that kind of fire? I surprised myself, I admitted softly, watching city lights blur past the window. But Romey deserved it, and frankly, so did I. We soon pulled into Kit's cozy neighborhood, a modest area filled with tidy homes that felt worlds away from the Wexley mansion. As we stepped inside her apartment, the scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air, instantly calming my nerves. Two familiar faces greeted me from the kitchen. Sloane, a fellow artist whose studio neighbored mine, and Barrett, Kit's easygoing brother and one of my most steadfast supporters. They rose quickly, pulling me into tight hugs filled with genuine warmth. Leah, you legend, Barrett laughed, eyes sparkling mischievously. Kit filled us in. Honestly, it's about time you gave those people hell. Sloane squeezed my hand gently. You okay, though? That must have been exhausting. I nodded slowly, feeling tears prick at my eyes, not from pain, but from overwhelming relief. Better than okay, actually. Free? We settled into comfortable seats around Kit's cozy living room, sharing stories, sipping hot coffee, and eating sweet pastries Barrett had baked earlier. Warmth settled deep inside me, chasing away lingering shadows of isolation. Here, surrounded by these people who'd stood by me unconditionally, I finally felt seen. Sloane leaned forward, eyes shining with curiosity. What's next, Leah? Lena called me. She's practically giddy about your exhibition. My heart lifted, excitement fluttering softly in my chest. Everything changes. No more hiding or shrinking myself. Romey's legacy and mine deserves better. Kit smiled, proud and unwavering. We're all behind you, whatever you need. The sincerity of their support overwhelmed me, starkly contrasting my family's calculated indifference. For so long I'd chased validation from people incapable of offering genuine love, overlooking those who quietly offered true acceptance. The realization washed over me gently, powerful in its simplicity. Chosen family mattered infinitely more than biological ties rooted in cruelty. Kit, Sloane, Barrett, they had quietly shown up again and again, never demanding recognition or repayment. Their love was unconditional, rooted in compassion rather than convenience. "Guys," I began softly, voice steady but emotional, "I just thank you for always being there. I wouldn't have survived this without you." Kit nudged me gently. "That's what real family does, Leah, and we'll keep being here." Sloane smiled warmly, "Always." Barrett leaned back comfortably, crossing his arms casually. "And hey, it's nice seeing the real Leah finally step out. Welcome to the spotlight." I laughed softly, feeling lighter than I had in years. Tonight had started as one of the most painful evenings of my life, but now, surrounded by genuine allies, it felt more like liberation. This was the family I'd always longed for, one built on love, authenticity, and unwavering loyalty. As the night wore gently on, conversation easing into comfortable quiet, I allowed myself to breathe deeply, embracing the profound peace of being truly known. My biological family had chosen image and control over humanity, but here, tonight, in this modest, cozy apartment, I'd found a family whose love would never hinge on my silence or submission. Finally, after a lifetime trapped in shadows, I'd discovered exactly where I belonged, in the warmth of those who saw and loved the real Leah Chambers. The days following the confrontation blurred into an intense but strangely satisfying whirlwind. The revelation at the party had rippled quickly through society circles, exposing my parents' polished facade for the cold manipulation beneath. My phone buzzed incessantly, calls from unfamiliar numbers piling up alongside messages begging for interviews and comments. Yet I ignored them all, focused instead on reclaiming myself and setting clear, unbreakable boundaries for the first time in my life. One morning, while sorting through the chaos, a name flashed unexpectedly on my phone: Danica. For a moment, old reflexes nearly took hold, fingers instinctively hovering over the green accept button. But I stopped myself, exhaling slowly before declining the call firmly. Almost immediately, a text popped up. "Leah, please talk to me. Mom and Dad are a wreck. You don't understand how hard this is on us." Anger and disbelief surged, sharp and hot. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling slightly before typing out a firm, decisive response. "No, Danica, you don't understand. This isn't something you get to brush aside anymore. Respect my boundaries or don't contact me at all." I hit send, breathing through the wave of emotions washing over me. For the first time, saying no felt genuinely empowering, not petty or vengeful, simply firm and clear. This was self-respect, unfamiliar, but exhilarating. Shortly afterward, my phone rang again, this time flashing Althea's name. This call was easier to reject, a quick swipe silencing my mother's attempt to regain control. Within seconds, a voicemail notification popped up. Her voice crackled, desperate beneath layers of forced composure. "Leah, stop this childishness. You've made your point, come home, apologize, and we'll handle everything quietly. Don't throw away your future over a tantrum." The arrogance in her voice erased any lingering doubt. Her lack of remorse hardened my resolve. No more bending, no more compromise. I deleted her voicemail, cutting the last thread connecting me to their manipulative world. Later that afternoon, a sleek black sedan parked outside my studio. My father stepped out, eyes shielded by dark sunglasses, face set in tense lines of anger. I watched calmly as he knocked sharply at the door, ignoring the tightening knot in my stomach. Opening the door, I faced him without flinching. His jaw tightened as he surveyed the modest studio space, clearly unimpressed. "You've caused enough drama, Leah," he began coldly, eyes narrowing behind tinted lenses. "End this spectacle now. We can resolve this quietly." "No," I replied firmly, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. "I've said everything I needed to say." He stepped forward, voice dropping threateningly. "Think carefully, do you really want to go to war against your own family?" I met his gaze head-on, feeling strong and unshaken for the first time in memory. "You chose this battle the moment you betrayed me, and Romey. My answer remains the same." His expression darkened dangerously. "You'll regret this." "No, I won't," I countered quietly. "You taught me well, family loyalty is conditional in your world, but that isn't mine anymore." I gently shut the door, hearing his sharp, frustrated exhale from behind it. The car roared away moments later, leaving only silence in its wake. I leaned against the wall, heart racing but spirit stronger than ever. These moments weren't easy, each interaction testing my resolve, but every boundary drawn, every clear refusal of their manipulation, strengthened the foundation of self-respect I'd begun to build. Finally, after a lifetime spent quietly accepting their cruelty, I stood firm, refusing to allow them even an inch of control over my peace. Boundaries weren't just lines anymore, they were walls protecting my right to exist freely, authentically, and unapologetically. In the weeks that followed, my life transformed entirely. Lena had delivered on every promise. My exhibit became a sensation, the raw honesty of my paintings resonating deeply with critics and visitors alike. The truth I'd poured onto canvas was no longer hidden. Instead, it shone brilliantly, a beacon to others who had suffered in silence. Despite the surge of success, one thought persisted. Romey. She'd been erased and forgotten, yet her story had given me courage. Now, I needed to honor her legacy by creating lasting change. One crisp morning, standing alone in my bustling studio, I gazed at Romey's portrait, the piece that had captivated Lena at our first meeting. Her gentle eyes, painted softly yet filled with quiet strength, stared back at me, silently urging action. With a surge of determination, I picked up my phone and dialed Lena. She answered immediately, warmth in her voice. Leah, the exhibition's success has been incredible. What can I do for you? I have another idea, I replied softly, eyes never leaving Romey's portrait. I want to establish a foundation in Romey's name, a scholarship for young artists who've been silenced, overlooked, or dismissed by their families. There was a brief pause before Lena replied, voice filled with genuine enthusiasm. That's beautiful, Leah. Romey would be proud. Let's make it happen. Within days, plans moved swiftly. I poured my newfound financial success into creating the Romey Wexley Foundation, establishing grants and mentorship programs aimed specifically at supporting emerging artists from backgrounds marked by neglect, manipulation, or emotional abuse. The announcement resonated powerfully, and donations poured in from across the art community, rapidly turning the foundation into a beacon of empowerment and hope. Media interest grew exponentially, yet I carefully controlled my story, focusing less on my parents' betrayal and more on my journey toward reclaiming my identity and honoring Romey's legacy. Still, whispers inevitably filtered back about my parents' social downfall, their empire of appearances finally exposed and crumbling beneath the weight of scandal and isolation. Danica occasionally reached out, her messages shifting gradually from defensive pleading to hesitant, genuine apologies. Though wary, I allowed careful, limited contact, but on my terms. I wasn't ready to forgive fully, but neither would I deny her the opportunity to grow from this painful reckoning. Meanwhile, Kit, Sloan, and Barrett stayed loyally at my side, proudly supporting every step forward. Together, we carefully curated a benefit event to officially launch Romey's Foundation. That evening, standing before an eager audience in an elegant gallery, my heart swelled with pride and bittersweet emotion as I spoke. My Aunt Romey was silenced and hidden away, not for her weakness but because of her strength. Tonight, we honor her truth and empower others to reclaim theirs. This foundation isn't just a tribute, it's a lifeline. Together, we'll rewrite legacies once defined by shame and fear into stories of strength, resilience, and authenticity. Applause erupted warmly, eyes around the room shimmering with emotion and understanding. Kit caught my gaze from the front row, her smile steady and reassuring. In that moment, surrounded by the quiet strength of my chosen family and the memory of Romey's courage, clarity washed over me profoundly. I hadn't just reclaimed my family name, I'd reshaped it entirely, from something tarnished and oppressive into a powerful symbol of hope, integrity, and change. My parents had once controlled the narrative, twisting it cruelly to silence and manipulate. But tonight, standing strong in front of an audience celebrating truth and authenticity, the narrative was entirely mine. And Romey's quiet voice, silenced long ago, finally echoed loudly. Through me, through those inspired by her story, and through every artist who'd find freedom through the foundation that bore her name. Time passed, each day reinforcing the foundation I'd painstakingly built, not only through success but through choosing myself again and again. With every brushstroke, every painting, I unraveled years of silenced emotions, finally free from the crushing weight of my family's impossible expectations. One afternoon, alone in my quiet studio, I stepped back to consider my latest work, an abstract self-portrait, filled with bold, vibrant colors and gentle curves, reflecting the truth of who I'd become. The woman staring back from the canvas radiated strength and quiet self-assurance, no longer desperate for approval. Her worth wasn't defined by the judgments or cruelty of others but found within herself, steady, constant, and unshakable. A gentle knock at the door pulled me from contemplation. Kit entered, smiling warmly. She stood beside me, silently absorbing the painting, her eyes thoughtful and appreciative. "It's incredible, Leah," she finally whispered. "You've changed so much, and this piece shows it perfectly." I glanced at her, warmth spreading through me. I feel different, it's like I finally know myself, without their shadows clouding everything. Kit squeezed my hand softly, understanding reflected in her eyes. "And how does that feel?" "Like peace," I replied quietly, certainty filling my voice. "Real, unbreakable peace." Kit nodded gently. "You earned it." As she left me alone again, I stood quietly, gazing back at the canvas. Suddenly my phone vibrated, a message lighting the screen. Danica's name appeared, brief but sincere. "I saw the foundation launch online. I'm proud of you, Leah, really." This time, seeing her message didn't spark pain or anger, only calm acknowledgement. My response was simple but meaningful. "Thank you, Danica. That means a lot." I placed the phone down gently, breathing deeply. There was no resentment left, only clarity and acceptance of the boundaries I'd built. I didn't crave reconciliation. I'd simply learned how to allow peace into my life on my own terms. The studio filled with soft golden sunlight as the afternoon wore on, warming my skin, calming my heart. Surrounded by paintings that told my story, the real one, stripped of the lies and illusions I'd once accepted, I felt profoundly whole. In silence I thought of Romey, her courage resonating quietly within me. I imagined her smiling softly, proud of the life I'd created from the ruins left by our family. She had taught me the most important lesson of all, that true peace could never be granted by others, only claimed within myself. My family had once wielded approval, like a weapon, conditional and painful. But standing here now, reflecting on the woman I'd become, I understood deeply that my value had never depended on their acceptance. Their rejection had liberated me, guiding me toward a truth I'd never otherwise discovered, that my worth was mine alone, untouchable by external judgments or manipulation. A gentle smile lifted my lips, tranquility settling deeply into my bones. For the first time completely and profoundly, I knew I was enough. More than enough. I didn't need their validation or their apologies, because everything I'd needed had always existed within me, waiting patiently to be recognized. Finally, after years of searching, struggling, and fighting for the simplest acknowledgement of my worth, I'd arrived exactly where I belonged, at peace within my own skin. And nothing, not even the shadows of my past, could ever diminish the quiet power of this moment. Have you ever felt invisible in your own life, silenced by the people who were supposed to love and support you most? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments, because sharing our truths is powerful, healing, and incredibly brave. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who needs reassurance that they can define success, happiness, and worth on their own terms, not by what others demand. Remember, your value isn't negotiable. You don't need permission from anyone else to honor who you truly are. Ask yourself, whose approval are you still chasing? Reflect deeply, then share your truth below. It's your life, your story, and the moment you realize your own worth is the moment you're truly free.